Now, today is Election Day in Canada, and for the last 5 weeks, the federal party Liberals have crisscrossed the country asking Canadians for their votes. And Canadians have been watching closely and turned out in record numbers for advanced polls. But how is the election being viewed by those around the world? Robert Huish, Associate Professor of International Development Studies at Dalhousie University, joins us once again this morning to put everything in perspective. Good morning, Robert.
Hi, Crystal. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. So is it just our imagination, or do there seem to be a lot more international eyes than normal on our election?
Oh, you're right on the money there, because this is only the second election in the Western world that's taken place since Donald Trump's been in power. And just since the beginning of Trump's administration, the whole world has been looking at Canada quite closely, because we have been that sounding board, that front line of his international aggression, with be it tariffs or be it talks about annexation. This is something that other countries are just as worried about. You look globally, how many countries have been in some way insulted by the Trump administration in the first few months of it, and it's profoundly overwhelming how many have. So even though this election, kind of by design, was supposed to be really about Justin Trudeau, it has quickly turned into being really about Donald Trump. And that is what we're probably going to see, how people are going to be voting today. It's an election that really matters, not just for Canada, but also for the world, to understand how Canada is going to respond to this type of aggression from what has traditionally been our closest friend and trading partner and neighbor. It was something where we've seen all this bluster about tariffs, and the annexation of Canada into the 51st state is really going to play out. And the message by all the party leaders have changed since the beginning of the election season, so that it's presented more of a softer tone for many of the leaders, and one that's trying to talk about, shall we say, I guess, resilience and economic growth as being the primary factors, rather than some of the more divisive politics that we've seen leading up to the election.
Yes, and you kind of alluded to some of it there, Robert, but how has U.S. President Donald Trump really transformed this election campaign so far?
Well, the big one is, if we look at what was leading up to the election, we had Mr. Poilievre that was just locked in solid on critiquing Justin Trudeau's legacy, and particularly taking a look at a lot of the identity politics that came out of Trudeau's office. Trudeau sort of had this idea about, I should say, about sort of treating those in disregard who somehow disagreed with him as being sort of morally illegitimate. And Poilievre he kind of weaponized that towards December and into January. But with Mr. Carney taking the threat of annexation and Trumpism very, very seriously, that's really forced the whole election to switch, to talk about what is going to be the future of Canada, and what can Canada do as a more united and somehow new brand of patriotic identity come together to keep the United States at bay. So that's really changed the whole game. And I think what we're going to see, other countries who have elections coming up in this year ahead, will start to see if there's any value in moving away from very divisive identity politics to ones of more, where can sound economic growth plans, and where can even, dare we say, patriotism come into the equation in trying to win an election.
Mm-hmm. Now, polls have shown the largest swing in Canada's political history. The Conservatives were leading, very handily at the beginning of the election campaign, and now it's a neck-and-neck race. So what factors have played into that? Obviously, I would say U.S. Donald Trump, that factor has played in. Any others?
Yeah, no, and that's wild. The point you just made there, the swing of just how much of a lead the Conservatives had at the beginning. They were up 25 percentage points or more, and now they're trailing by 5 in the polls. That's not just a huge swing in terms of Canada. Globally, around the world, we have not seen something like that. It happened so quickly. So what we see there is that sort of attack that the Conservatives had, that many who may not have been sound supporters of the Conservative Party kept hearing from Mr. Poilievre, was a message that sounded a lot like Donald Trump. I mean, and even some of the stump speeches, right down to trying to return plastic straws and Canada First and other policies, really seem to be taking a playbook right out of Trump. So that way of sort of finding those attacking divisive wedges as a means to power seems to have worn off. That even the conservatives themselves have tried to take that aggressive stance of Poilievre away from the public facing view of the party, and even with recent election commercials. So I think what we're going to see here is that what nobody calculated, and especially Donald Trump did not calculate, was that Canada would rally behind a different message of defensive nation, protection of economy, and trying to actually adjust our economy to find new solutions from within rather than being dependent upon the U.S. So every party has switched that, and the Liberals have really tried to move their brand away from Justin Trudeau to now Mark Carney's new vision. Mr. Poilievre has tried to soften his tone quite a bit, and the other parties, they have also adjusted their message quite a bit. So what we see, Crystal, here is an example of a reaction, and the world is going to see if today Canada is able to test that reaction out in a successful way. The only other thing I can say here is that has not been mentioned too much is the role of foreign interference. We've heard very, very little about foreign interference in this election, when the past two elections, that was all the discussion leading up to 2024, is that there was evidence of it. So we might hear stories down the road if there were attempts by foreign governments or individuals to try to interfere with this election. And Canada right now is in an aggressive stance with the United States, with Russia. It has not had a good relationship with India and China. So I might not be surprised if we see interference talk down the road.
Okay, so I'm going to leave this conversation with a challenge. We've already gone over time, so if you can answer this in like 30 seconds before you go. I just wanted to pick your brain on the meeting Saturday between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelenskyy when both men were in the Vatican City for the funeral of Pope Francis. They met. It was quite historic. I wondered if you could reflect on that in 30 seconds.
All right. So what a change in tone, right? That body language of the two guys sort of listening to each other inside of a church. Very different demeanor than sort of the ruckus behavior that was taking place inside the White House. The fact that Zelenskyy had a one-on-one with Trump might be a good thing. A lot of folks in Ukraine are seeing that as an important step. Trump is now saying, hey, why isn't Putin stopping his attacks against Ukraine? And I think Trump is seeing that his brand and his way of negotiating isn't having the effect in Moscow or Ukraine the way that he wanted. But really, the deal that's still in Washington's court is one that leaves Ukraine very, very shorthanded. So that's a discussion that Zelenskyy will want to continue with Trump rather than just saying, hey, we're closer to a deal and a ceasefire.
Okay, Robert, thank you so much for that. Thank you for this entire conversation. We appreciate speaking with you every time.
Thanks so much, Crystal.
Our pleasure indeed to have you on our show.